Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey. Really excited to see if we can take some calls this morning. 877-757-9424. Talking about Latin, exorcisms, Gregorian chanting, and so much more. Debbie Giorgianni and Adam Blai, good morning.
Good morning, Keith. Thank you so much for having us. Yep, it's Debbie and Adam here, and we are excited to be with you on the next right thing. And we're talking about, Keith was correct, Latin in exorcisms. We're talking about Gregorian chant. We're talking about a true humility. Now, this is just a little snippet of what Adam and I will be covering on a full episode of The Spirit World coming up in the near future on humility, true, genuine humility. But Adam, I'll let you start because I actually have a lot to say about Gregorian chant. My husband and I love Gregorian chant. We actually play Gregorian chant typically probably 2 to 3 nights a week throughout the whole entire evening, believe it or not. If we're having a very stressful week, we will have Gregorian chant playing in the home.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I love Gregorian chant myself. I find it just very soothing in the background. So yeah, I mean, Pope Gregory brought about a standardization of chant within the church, and the bulk of it is the Psalms, because it's there are, of course, other prayers, but the bulk of the real Gregorian chant, and what I mean by that is monks singing the chant, as opposed to choirs that are secular. The bulk of the recordings out there are the Psalms, and then, there are additional prayers. So, yeah, Pope Gregory standardized it. They came up a way of notating the music. This was before our modern form of notating music came about. And yeah, it's quite beautiful in the sense, that it's lovely to the ear, it's soothing, but it is also prayer. I think it's great. We have had people use it that are troubled, and they find it soothing on the human level, but it's agitating to the evil spirits because, of course, they don't like chant for a number of reasons, and those include, there are 3 what are called sacredized languages, and what that is a reference to is the 3 languages that were on the cross. So, when people were crucified by Rome, typically they would have a sign tacked to the cross for the people to see of what crime the person had committed, and as a way to kind of show Rome's justice and discourage people from doing those crimes. And so, we hear the references to the good and the bad thief. They probably would have had thief in some way written on their crosses. So on Jesus's cross, it was King of the Jews, or just King, was written in 3 languages, Hebrew, Latin, and Greek. And that was because the people that would have been witnessing Rome's executions, those were the 3 languages that were in use by most people in that region of the Roman Empire. And so it simply was a practical matter that those were the 3 languages on the cross. So in that sense, the church considers them sacredized, made sacred, by being on the cross. And then secondly, I think Gregorian chant has a particular kind of special place in the church because Latin is the official language of the church. So, when letters come out from Rome to the various dioceses around the world on particular rulings or directives, they come out in Latin. And that's because the church is everywhere in the world, and there's many, many different languages around the world. And so Latin is kind of the standard language that the church communicates in, and then the local conference of bishops then translates that into their local language. Mm-hmm. So there's a few reasons I think that Gregorian chant is beautiful and soothing, both on the human level and the prayer level.
So I'm glad you shared that about the message on the cross. That's very important for our listeners. But let's talk about the work that you do on a weekly basis with being in the exorcism work that you do, and is Latin brought in? Is there Gregorian chant? Talk a little bit about that because let's share this. There have been many folks out there on the internet, some that are in the field, the same field that you're in, Adam, and some that are on the outside kind of studying it. And they have made the comments and multiple comments that, Latin is used to drive away the demons. Latin is the language that's more effective than what somebody speaks on and the regular basis, kind of clear up some of the misconceptions of that and maybe put it into perspective, so it makes us all feel much more confident and secure knowing that we're okay if we don't know Latin.
Yeah, so this is a touchy subject for some people because they have kind of made the language of Latin into, I don't know, some kind of special thing in a way that isn't helpful. So first off, the most important thing I think when you think about this is Jesus knows all languages. Okay, he doesn't only know Latin. He doesn't wait until he hears a request from us, a prayer from us in Latin, to decide to listen to that and respond if it's his will. And I know that sounds simple, but it's an important point because it touches on the difference between magic and prayer. So in magic, there are incantations. We can think of the nonsense word, and it has a history, of course. It had meaning at one point. But the nonsense word abracadabra, we know in our Western culture is kind of associated in a childlike way with an incantation or magic is about to happen. It's a nonsense word to us. It's just noises that we make with our mouth. That's a magical incantation. That's the idea that if I say certain things and make certain noises with my mouth and wiggle my fingers in a certain way and draw a shape on the floor, suddenly something that I want to happen is going to happen. It's kind of a way of looking at the universe as a big machine, and if I know how to manipulate it through these supposedly meaningful gestures and noises, I'll get what I want. That's not prayer. Prayer is a living dialogue with God, a living dialogue with our Creator and our Father through Jesus, through his mother. That is a conversation. And yes, there are fixed prayers that we say, but for instance, the Our Father, if we think of that in English, we want to say the Our Father with intent and understanding in our heart of what we are saying. The first words, Our Father. I want to interiorly try to connect with the idea that I'm appealing to the Heavenly Father as my Father, as an adopted child of God. That brings about an orientation in my heart and in my mind that as I then move through the prayer, I am oriented to God as a Father. You see, that's not just making a noise of saying Our Father, that is setting me up for the rest of the prayer interiorly in a living dialogue with God. So we want to be careful with Latin because most people don't know it well. Even almost all exorcists don't know it well enough to use it during an exorcism. If you don't understand what you're saying, and it's not an actual prayer, that interiorly you understand what you're saying, like the example I just gave of Our Father, and it is, there's an interior experience of that, visualization, kind of an awareness and a presence in the prayer, it's meaningless. And so when people pray, for instance, and they don't have any heart behind the prayer, is one way to put it, they're not really praying. If they're just saying the words emptily, I know this will sound kind of silly to some people, but the demons will say it along with you. I've seen them do it in a mocking way and wag their finger at the person as if to say, I can make noises with my mouth too. You're not actually praying. As soon as you then switch and somebody else says, no, let me show you, and I've literally had this conversation in this encounter with the demonic, with the possessed person and their spouse. We were not in an exorcism. And then show them the exact same words said with heart and intent and love with God. The demon immediately going silent, recoiling, turning away, and trying to start clawing away to get away from the person who's praying genuinely, having just mocked the Our Father 30 seconds before and said it with the person because they were saying it in an empty way. So what I'm saying, Deb, is we don't want to make Latin kind of a magical incantation that I say, well, I don't know what these words really mean, but if I say these syllables, that's going to have an effect on the devil or the demons. You want to be really careful. And let me give you another quick example. When exorcists don't know Latin well, if they're stumbling or they mispronounce a certain complex word, and I've seen this too, the demons will correct their pronunciation and often laugh and say, didn't you mean? And then they'll say it for them in the proper form because they know Latin better than we do. They've been around the whole time and they know all the languages. So yes, it's a special language. Yes, it's sacredized. Yes, it's the official language of the church. But we need to say it as a prayer, not as an empty set of noises that we're making and reading off a page.
Okay, that was excellent, and we're going to be talking more about that on the spirit world in an upcoming episode, and that is very important how you shared it. I thought your delivery was fabulous for all of us, because we can't really get into it in this short segment of the next right thing, because I know we're going to hit the pause button in a moment, send it back to Keith, but he'll give it back to us for a final comments. But Adam, I'm so grateful to you that you shared this, and from the inside the exorcism world, because I have found, and I'm not trying to be critical at all. I'm not trying to be critical, but I've found that there's this kind of cool, trendy type of thing happening where people are saying, I can pray this in Latin, or I've actually been at meetings. This is no joke, and I'm being honest, where the person will lead us in prayer, and and somebody will say, "Oh, don't you speak Latin? Can you do it in Latin?" I mean, it's not a cool. How do I say this? It shouldn't be something like, well, I can do it this way, so it makes it even more fascinating. I agree with you. It comes from the heart. It's from love, and that leads us right into true and genuine humility, Adam. Because I sometimes, and I'm just going to say this, I see a lot of exterior behavior that implies that here I am holy, here I am humble. And then when you meet that person or that group behind closed doors, they're nothing like they're portraying out in public. So I'm just saying, this is a little bizarre, and I just think we need to address it, because if we really want to talk true humility, if we really want to talk pure and genuine heart, if we really want to talk effective nature of prayer, let's really go to the heart of it, no pun intended, and really start there and explore that, so we can all enter into an honest, authentic, genuine relationship with God and each other. What do you say?
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I'm trying to point out, Deb. And as a final kind of to follow up with what I was saying, I have seen situations where a few words of prayer truly from the heart to Jesus during an exorcism, asking him to help, has had more effect than the previous 20 minutes of the fixed prayer. I'm not saying the prayer is not effective, but when things are said from the heart, it softens Christ's heart towards us.
Amen. Wow. That was the golden nugget right there. We're going to send it back to you, Keith.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. Pray with genuine and sincere hearts. Thank you so much, Debbie and Adam. But hey, we're going to take it back after this break, so stay tuned. If you have any thoughts, comments about praying in Latin or Gregorian chanting, still give us a call, 877-757-9424. Stay tuned. We're going to continue this conversation on The Next Right Thing. So we'll see you right after this break. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Morning Joy, where truth matters.
This is the Pope Paul VI Institute Minute with Dr. Tom Hilgers.
When I read Humanae Vitae's challenge to men of science, I felt that the Church was speaking directly to me. In 1968, I was a senior medical student. By December of that year, I had begun my first research project on natural methods of family planning, but that project didn't lead very far. At the time, I was also president of my medical fraternity. Some of my fraternity brothers, relying mostly on the national media's information, ridiculed the Church's position on contraception and her letter, Humanae Vitae. Many felt that the kind of science for which the Church was asking for was impossible. Yet I remember telling them that I thought the answer would be forthcoming within the next 5 years. At the time I said that, it seemed more like a wish and a desire than anything else. Until next time, I'm Dr. Tom Hilgers.
For a complimentary gift and more information on the Pope Paul VI Institute, log on to www.popepaul6, that's Roman numeral 6.com.
Our family had been going through crisis. Little by little, we just found ourselves drifting completely away. I was afraid to go back. I mean, I cried the first time I received the sacraments again. Cried because I was back and because I had allowed God to become a part of me again. It's united our family. There's peace in our home that we didn't have before.
If you've been away from the Catholic Church for any reason, visit CatholicsComeHome.org today.
All right, welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey, and we're going to pass it right on back over to Debbie Giorgianni and Adam Blai on the next right thing, talking all about Gregorian chanting, Latin, and true humility. Debbie and Adam, take it away.
Keith, I got to tell you, you are hanging in there with the Morning Joy listeners. God bless you. You're under the weather. You've been under the weather for a few days. I love the new Hollywood raspy voice. I think you should try to keep it because you are a trained actor, so I think that's really cool. I love that. It sounds good, Keith. It's sounding
Thank
good,
you.
I think, for our listeners. Okay, but back to true humility and believe me, and let me just share something because I really don't want to entertain emails saying, Debbie, do you have something against Latin? I learned Latin. I went to Catholic school. I learned Latin, and just for people to know, I sing in Latin. Okay, so just for people to know that's my choice of wanting to do that. I love Latin. I have Gregorian Chant playing all the time. I love Latin. I'm just noticing, Adam, that there's this trend of folks wanting to, and I don't mean to criticize, but almost like impress other people of being able to pray in Latin and to lead certain groups. And I don't think necessarily that's the best use in that time for Latin when the majority of people don't understand what they are saying in the room. They can't enter in. And so how do they, unless you're going to do it in Latin and English so that everybody can enter in with a complete heart in that prayer. And I think Tim shared a comment, our producer, that even at church, I think the deacon did that. They said it in Latin and then English. See, that's brilliant, but I don't think it's necessarily a fair thing to do to people, because how do they enter into something that basically sounds like gibberish to them?
Yeah, and in a sense, I love Latin. I've been studying it for years as part of my canon law degree that I just finished. So, I've learned firsthand, and I'm not good with languages, so I'm not saying this is unusual. This is more my fault than anything else. But I've learned firsthand it's a difficult language to do well. You can get the basics of it, but I know, I work in the church. I work for my bishop. I work in our tribunal, and in order to properly translate and understand Latin, you need to really study it beyond the years that you would do as part of a degree. You need to move on and be what would be called a Latinist, where like you're getting an advanced degree in the language. You wouldn't rely on somebody to translate Latin and truly understand its nuances unless they had gotten an advanced degree in it. At least we wouldn't in canon law, because when you're dealing with law, things have to be truly, completely correct in your translation. So, I personally, I can understand a few of the words, when things are prayed or sung in Latin, but I would have to live it every day for years to get to the point that I truly would understand it and be able to pray it.
Right. Well, and we're not disrespecting in any way the beautiful sacred language at all. We're trying to explain so that everybody can enter into it fully. But the reality is there are people out there with a microphone, saying that it has to be this way or it has to be that way in order to, keep demons at bay and stuff like that. I think those are dangerous statements. I'm just going to say that because we don't know that. Like you say all the time, Adam, we don't know. It's God is in charge, and God can do whatever he wants and whatever he wills and whatever he thinks is important for us, right?
Exactly, Deb. And, I go to exorcisms every week. I'm at 3 to 4 of them every week for years, more than 10 years now. And before that, it was more than 3 a week. It was more like 5 days out of the week. And it's almost always done in English because most priests are not Latinists. So I've been watching demons be cast out through the English language for more than a decade, and I've seen people completely freed and liberated. It's not... Jesus knows all languages. He's there. He understands us. And it's him doing it in the end. It's not the sound of a word that I'm making that's casting the demon out. It's Jesus Christ.
Right, absolutely. So we're trying to educate. Adam and I are committed to solid catechesis. And that's the reason why we do The Next Right Thing. And that's the reason why we are the co-hosts of The Spirit World. That is the reason. Now, real quickly, we're going to make the transition to true humility. Here I go again. I sound like I'm on a soapbox. I'm really not. I'm just trying to make it clear for folks, because I get the emails of people really feeling sad that somebody has made them feel inadequate or less than, or has made comments, and I don't, that hurts my heart terribly, because the people that are sending these emails are beautiful souls, and they're being hurt and wounded because of somebody else's own pride and ego. So Adam, would you agree that just because somebody, even if it's a famous person, a celebrity, somebody out there writing books and stuff, if they check all the boxes of true humility, they check all the boxes, don't just necessarily assume that person is actually genuinely humble? Not that you should criticize, but we should pray for everybody, and not just by exterior appearances think that somebody is humble. We don't know their heart unless we're going to spend the time to get to know their heart. What do you say to that?
Well, I think even beyond that, only God knows our heart truly. So, I used to work in forensics, in dealing with criminals and psychology for a number of years. And there are people that you can spend years with and have no idea who they really are, what they're really like. So only God knows the heart, honestly. For myself, at least, the biggest indicator of humility that I think I've seen is obedience.
Amen.
So
Amen.
If I'm humble, I trust Jesus as the head of the church. I trust my bishop. And, look at Padre Pio when he was told to stop saying his masses publicly. He was humble, and he trusted that Jesus had put that bishop over him, and he was to obey that bishop as he would obey God. And he didn't complain or badmouth or anything else. And he had that decade of submission and humility and obedience. And the opposite of that, of course, is disobedience and rebellion. But the church's head is Jesus Christ. And so it's a top-down system, and we have to trust him and obey him, even in the times that we maybe don't understand in the moment why he is asking us to do certain things.
I couldn't agree with you more. That I have noticed that in the ministry work that I have been I have been able to, by the grace of God, since 1989 to work in, and I've seen the same thing. Those that are truly obedient to authority and really do the right thing, the next right thing, those are the ones that really are working towards that humility. And I love that. And it's a beautiful thing to be around those people, because they encourage you to do the same thing. It's really wonderful. So we're going to do more on this in an upcoming the Spirit World episode, but we're running out of time for today. So the next right thing, pray from the heart. Okay, pray from the heart, and really practice that obedience. And we're going to turn it over to you, Keith.
So much. Once again, Debbie and Adam always giving us a nice bite-sized bite of catechesis in the mornings on The Next Right Thing, which we can also even get more catechesis on the Spirit World weekends at 10 a.m. Central on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. So thank you so much, Debbie and Adam. Speaking of, are you interested in learning more about our authentic Catholic faith? Get a refresher on your catechesis by following all of our social media accounts. GRN Online. That's GRN Online. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter, but not TikTok. Okay, just don't even download the app. Just get away from it. But we're here to help bring truth and joy to the social media world. We have content curated just for you, whether you're interested in catching these segments of Morning Joy, or A Life Lived Joyfully, or the Spirit World. We have you. We've got you covered. So whether it's, like I said, a 15-second video, 15-minute video, you can always find some sort of catechesis or inspiration throughout your day. And, if you happen to give up social media, well, you can go to our website, grnonline.com. But if maybe you know maybe some Catholic trivia, maybe you're a connoisseur of Catholic trivia, I recommend going to grnonline.com/joy, we got our question of the day. The question of the day is, which famous Baroque composer was a Catholic priest? And there is a prize. So if you know the answer to which famous Baroque composer was a Catholic priest, grnonline.com/joy. Coming up next, though, we've got some interesting questions to ask. Like, what is the most perfect prayer? Stay tuned. We're going to be thinking out loud with Dave Palmer. So stay tuned. We'll see you after this break.
You're listening to Morning Joy, where truth matters.